Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Joe Pavlansky, pop culture historian, writer for Scary Monsters magazine, and curator of the Cryptic Classics. Co-hosting, as always, is the maestro of mail order mysteries and owner of the House of the Unusual.com, the one, the only, the intrepid Eddie Guevara. Today's special guest, coming back from September 23rd, is Dave Haversat of the 1878 Press Company and Haversat and Ewing Galleries Auction. How's everyone doing tonight?
Oh, great.
Dave, before we get started, for maybe some people weren't here the last time you were on, real quick, tell us a little bit about yourself and your companies and your auction.
Sure. Well, I'm mainly involved in magic and novelties, jokes, gags, publishing of books that relate mainly to magicians and some pop culture titles and so forth. I run a conjuring magic auction house that sells anything from items of Harry Houdini, his letters, papers, to things of more modern magic fare like David Copperfield and David Blaine. So anyone that's interested in magic probably has purchased an item from me over the years. Well, that's about it in a nutshell.
If I wanted to put Eddie up for sale in your auction, how much do you think I could get for him?
Well, Eddie's a unique character. I don't know. You'd have to ask his wife that. You know, she may be willing to just throw him out of the house at this point because I understand that her side of the bed is just it now has a 7-foot Frankenstein there. So I don't know. Yeah.
Eddie, what's new? What's new?
Well, no, nothing much. David, we wanted to discuss in this episode, and I know, and I told them that you're the expert in this field. But supposing, you know, like Houdini and Halloween, since Halloween is coming up, and it's, you know, interesting topics. He was king in all his ghost huntings and discrediting all the people of his time, which I believe after him, a lot of people followed doing the same. Any good stories? I mean, I had told the story that because my man asked me here, Joe, he had asked me concerning Halloween in Cuba. And I go, my friend, in Cuba, there was no such thing. I got here in 1968 Halloween evening on the 31st of Halloween. And that's how I knew about Halloween, because I arrived here. Actually, I got here on the 30th. The next day was Halloween. So that's how it was kind of interesting, because I fell in love with the season because I was able to go trick-or-treating and stuff. And I can tell you it was kind of funny because I even continued doing the thing to almost the age of 13. I know it would sound like a goofy thing to do, but I actually went trick-or-treating when I was about either 12. I think I was 12, actually. And, you know, I went in New York because New York, it was cool. I lived in Washington Heights at the time. And it was pretty interesting. Having said that, you know, Dave, I'm going to give you the floor. Give us a couple of stories that you have.
Well, if you want me to talk, you know, about Harry Houdini, you know, it's true that he did pass away on Halloween Day in 1926, suffering from appendicitis.
Was that the reason so many things of him were generated? Like, you know, all this tales and stuff of him?
Well, even before his death, you know, I mean, Houdini was involved in so many different projects besides writing books on, you know, many subjects of magic. He, of course, was a big star at the time, but he got involved with exposing spiritualists and fake mediums, because after his mother had passed away, he was always trying to make contact, or thought he could make contact with his mother, because he really he had a very close bond with her, and he thought if there was a way to do that, which, you know, people to this day, when a loved one passes away, they hold these memories, and sometimes they have stories where the dreams seem so vivid that they thought that the person was reaching out to them was still alive or trying to give them a message. And Houdini also did that with his wife Bessie, saying, if there's a way I could come back, I'll have a secret code, and you'll know it's me, and it's not just one of these phony mediums making something up. But before his passing, and before he talked to Bessie about this, I think what had happened basically is that he had this need to try to make contact with his mother, and I believe that along one point he was fooled, not fooled, but he was duped, and then he found out that hey, I'm a magician, and I'm the one doing the tricks, and someone is preying on my vulnerability because I'm grieving, and they're trying to make a profit off of me, and saying they could connect with my loved one, and this person is saying this, and they're sending a message from beyond the grave. So once he found out that there's all these people out there doing this stuff, he kind of went on a crusade to try to debunk them and show how they trick people, and how they're doing these devious things, having people come in and doing seances, and there's supposed to be trumpets and noises and things flying through the air. And he would go and he would show those that were interested how these things were accomplished, and that they were all fake and phony. So he did that. In fact, even when he died, there's a book about a decade ago that came out that said that he didn't die from the appendicitis, or he died from the appendicitis, but that it was intentionally done. He was intentionally punched in the stomach with 3 hard blows, because the mediums hated him so much because of what he was doing to destroy them and expose them, that they kind of hired a hitman to kill him. So that's kind of one of those stories, whether you believe it or not. But that was Houdini's quest later in life to do this expose. In fact, Houdini did a lot of different traveling all over the place, and he even gave lectures. He would go into different cities and not necessarily do a show where he would do escapes, but he would lecture about these fraudulent mediums, and he would bring all the tools and how they would do things, these extension rods, these lead hands that, when you were seated around a table, the medium would take out a hand that was lead. Lead you can form. It's very pliable and bendable, and put that over the person sitting next to you, so it felt like the magician or the medium was holding your hand, but that allowed their real hand to be free to do things under the table, have horns and extension rods to make it look like ghosts are flying. You could kind of get an example of this if you watch the 1950s film of Houdini with Tony Curtis and his wife Janet Leigh. There's a scene in there where they expose, there's supposed to be this eerie music that's coming, and Houdini's mother makes an appearance, and then Tony Curtis, it's interrupted, the seance, and they find the music is coming from a record player under the chair, and there's a button, and the microphone comes from the chandelier. So you kind of, if you watch that film, they usually play it around this time of the year. It gives you an idea of what Houdini was about. But Houdini's show in the 1920s, 1925 and 26, he died in 1926. He had a full evening show, and part of the show was doing the regular magic tricks and doing things like the water torture cell. And the other half of the show was the expose. And I have one of the props that was used in that show. It's a spirit slate, and the spirit slates, where a message would be supposedly written on these small little chalkboards, and a chair that Houdini sat in, and he would demonstrate how the real slates were switched by the mediums from a secret pocket that was underneath the chair to the ones that had the message. And I acquired that chair in the crate that Houdini traveled with maybe about 5 years ago or so.
Now, Dave, I got a question. Did Houdini's wife, did she ever, during a seance or anything, did she ever get that that secret phrase or word from him?
Well, yes and no. At one point, she claimed that a medium by the name of Arthur Ford had successfully revealed the code, but then she later recanted that and said that she was under stress and she was mistaken and that was not correct, and Arthur Ford was not correct, or he was a phony or whatever. I actually have that letter from Bess Houdini that she sent to Arthur Ford acknowledging that he correctly revealed the code. But like I said, later on, that was believed to be just that she was, I don't know what she said, she was tired or stressed out or had a breakdown or something. But it could have been people around her, that influenced her, that told her, no, don't accept that. That wasn't the real code. And what had happened is when Houdini had died, she had met a person who was kind of in the carnival business. He was a showman, a pitchman of sorts. His name was Edward Saint. He was kind of the catalyst for starting these Houdini seances that were hosted on Halloween, and they would be held at places like the Knickerbocker Hotel, on the top of the roof and so forth. And there's even a recording, I believe it's on YouTube, of Bess Houdini speaking where, she would say, this is the final time we're having the seance and Houdini has not come through and so forth. The seances are still continuing to this day. With COVID, I understand that the this year's seance is going to be done over the internet.
So they still do them yearly on Halloween?
Yes.
Now, does anybody know what that code is, or has that been kept a secret?
Well, they don't really stress the code, at the seances, the modern day seances. It's more of, can they make any connection? What they usually do is they'll have a medium there, and they'll have a couple of Houdini's objects, a pair of his handcuffs, maybe some photographs and so forth. And they'll have people that are Houdini, that are interested in Houdini. And they'll be in the audience or they'll be around the table. But nothing has ever really occurred.
What was the code that was supposed to come through? What was the code that they shared?
Well, there's been different things that have been said. There's been the word forgive or believe, but yeah, that's something that was between Bess and Harry.
Okay, so she never left it in like a diary or any type of correspondence or anything like that of what the actual word was.
No, it's been, there's just been speculation of what it was. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things wasn't the book, The Unmasking of Robert Houdin. No, actually, no, that wasn't it. That was because he wrote that book because the time he wanted to meet with Howard Houdin's wife, and he didn't meet with them, I believe it was, and then he got mad at the French magician, and he tried to expose him. Is that correct?
That's Robert Houdin. Yeah, and
yeah, Roberto. I said Howard.
Yeah.
Howard, no, Roberto Houdin, and he did that. Now that showed that Houdini during his life, I think he was With what I've gone, from the years I've heard and learned from the different stories, he must have been one of those guys that just wasn't, you know, um, not a kind of a selfish guy, but a guy that if he didn't get his way, he wasn't happy, correct? Because that shows in his life when he wrote the book for Robert Houdin, he tried to expose the magician he once loved. In fact, his name apparently was changed to Houdini by using the same last name and then adding an I at the end, right? Am I correct in saying that?
About as far as Houdini being
No, as far as Houdini loved Robert Houdin, and then when he couldn't meet with the widow, he was upset about it, and then he wrote that book to expose Howard as a fake. I mean Robert as a fake.
yeah, but that was not. Robert Houdin was considered to be the father of modern magic, the type of magic we know today, and not like the alchemy type of performance.
Right,
Yeah, where you could
right.
swallow hot coals and things like that.
Right, he did for the modern magic, but the reason Houdini wrote that book is because he was upset of not meeting the widow. Am I correct in that?
Um, no, I don't think it was the widow. It may have been his son. May have been his son, but
Might have been his, yeah, because I remember reading something. I know he was mad and he wanted to expose him for that reason. Now, one thing I'm going to ask you, Dave. I know a lot of people say, and you can tell us this story that when somebody sells you or so, you go away and you take a lot of stuff. You go, all you need to take is the kitchen sink. Am I correct in saying you did visit the original house of Houdini in New York City and bought the kitchen sink?
well, I didn't buy the kitchen sink, but I did buy Houdini's medicine chest,
You didn't.
medicine cabinet, and I did.
You didn't like the kitchen sink?
Well, there was the bathroom sink, and bathtubs actually. Um, but David Copperfield got one of the bathtubs, and then there was a secondary bathtub. But the one that David Copperfield acquired was supposedly the bathtub that Houdini, before he would prepare for his escape into icy waters, would go into the tub, and his assistants would pour buckets of ice on him, submerge him down into the tub, and kind of condition his body so he knew what to expect when he went into, a box that was going to go into the ice-filled waters, which he had to escape from. So that was that tub. When I went to Houdini's house, it was under construction, and it wasn't all that long ago. It had only been owned since Houdini died. It was only passed through the hands of, or had just several occupants all that time. There was it wasn't like the house revolved and had one family after another every 5 or 10 years. It was decades and decades where the same person lived in there. So very little construction wise was being done until about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the house has gone through major renovations.
Now,
Yeah.
now, Dave, if I remember right, about 10 or 12 years ago, wasn't there a proposed exhumation of his body to see how he actually died? I believe it was a family member or something like that wanted to dig him up and filed some court papers. Whatever happened with that?
Well, his body was never exhumed, and it kind of revolves around, or did revolve around, the what I said earlier about the thought that he was actually murdered or poisoned, or I mean, there's been different things, of course, like I said, with the mediums hiring someone there's this student who was a college student who punched him 3 times very hard in the abdomen. They were trying to say, well, he could have been the one that was hired by these mediums to injure Houdini, which would eventually lead to his death. There was talk that he was poisoned, but that never really went anywhere. That was there may have been some talk about it, but the family that remains, they were adamant that nothing was to happen. The grave was not to be disturbed. So nothing ever became of that. But you're right, there was talk about it. And under
Okay.
Houdini's head uh, is a pillow, and inside that pillow contains the letters. Um, again, with his mother, because he was so close to his mother. The family letters are supposedly all sewn in, or they are, into this pillow, and they're in which his head rests on. So, you,
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah. So, from a standpoint of, Houdini really hasn't been. It's to us, he's been dead for a long time. But when you think of things like ancient Egypt and so forth, um, where they go into the tombs and they disturb the graves and so forth. Um, that goes back thousands and thousands of years, and they find these treasures. I'm certain that these people that thought about exhuming his body would love to also have the ability to look at, what those letters contain.
All right.
Do you?
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. But I wonder, because he died in 26. If
If they're
almost
even around?
100 years later, if they haven't dissolved from moisture or anything, because who knows how well everything was preserved from the casket to the body. Nothing like ancient Egypt, where they made sure things would be preserved to last. You got to wonder what type of condition those would even be in if you were to
Yeah,
dig
it's
him up.
true. And personally, I mean, it's maybe those letters. There's been talk that those letters have there's copies of them out there, and it wouldn't even be necessary to do that. But it's disturbing the dead in the grave. I would be opposed to it. I don't think that's correct,
Absolutely.
unless there was something. I know, probably 20 years ago, um, they exhumed the grave of President Zachary Taylor, and because they thought he was poisoned, they were checking for arsenic, and
Hmm.
they found out that he wasn't, that he actually died um, from the causes that he did, which I can't remember, but something to the effect that he got ill after drinking milk and eating a bowl full of cherries, and then he died. And there was always speculation that he was murdered. And this is going way back. This is going back before Lincoln, but they exhumed his body about 20 years ago to end that thought. But with Houdini, um, there's really been no definitive proof that he died any other than just what had occurred, and that there was no conspiracies. But as you know, anytime someone who's well known, it goes on, and it will always happen. There's always this conspiracy theory that something happened. There's a mystery surviving it,
You know,
and
you,
surrounding it, and that's always going to happen.
you took the words right out of my mouth, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Anytime that there's a celebrity or somebody famous that dies, nobody ever wants to accept the what actually happened. There's always Elvis is still alive, or JFK is still alive, or they died this way or that way. No one ever wants to accept the actual cause of death, or that the person did die. They always want to believe that there's something more to the story, when usually 9 times out of 10 or so it's the simplest answer, and it's what
Yeah,
actually
I mean, like,
happened.
it's like with Marilyn Monroe. No one says, okay, well, she didn't die from an overdose and taking drugs, prescription drugs, and lots of them, but they feel that someone went into her place and made her take it, or did this or did that, and they wanted to make sure she would die. And so there's always, yeah,
Right.
there's always a conspiracy. And
Right. And I think it's always good to question things, and to look at different answers, but sometimes people could go too far. But it's always good to question. It's always good to investigate and to look. But most of the time, it's always the simple answer, and some people just can't accept that and just want to take it way too far.
Well, because of all the conspiracy theories that we've had, that's why mail order throughout the years has thrived so well. You can sell those theories in different forms,
Yeah, there is a conspiracy that you get usable stuff from the House of the Unusual.
Yeah, you mean unusable stuff, not usable. See, David, the story goes here that my friend over there and Todd both decided that, they played a joke. They said that it was called the House of the Unusable, so they both received the box.
Oh, look, hold on. Let me tell Dave. Listen, we're going to interject here from Houdini real quick because I want to tell you about your friend Eddie here and his questionable how would you say it, business ethics maybe. So he tells me I'm sending you a package. It's the 70s experience. You're going to love it. I'm getting pretty excited. I'm like, well, what could this be? So I'm waiting for the package, and a few days later, this small box comes in the mail, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is great!" I wonder what my friend, my buddy Eddie sent me. So I pick up the package. I'm like, "This is pretty light." I'm like, "It doesn't feel like anything's in here," and I'm shaking it. I'm like, "I don't hear anything." So I'm like, "Oh, maybe it's paper or something, something that's real light." So I'm like, "Man, what could he have sent me?" So I cut it, I get my knife, I cut it open, real gingerly just to make sure I don't mess anything up. And I take out the bubble wrap that's on the top, and I look through the crumpled up paper in there, and I take the pieces out, and he sends me an empty box. An empty box.
Imagine that, lighter than air. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, they called it the House of the Unusable. So outside the box, it said House of the Unusable instead of House of the Unusual.
I said, my buddy Eddie sends me an empty box. I said, that's great.
And I just
Not even a box I could reuse.
Well, you got some free bubble out of it, right?
Yeah, I got some free bubble wrap and some scrap newspaper.
Yeah, and you got a box you could use. It was unusable to me, so I figured why throw it out, send it to you.
Yeah, so you're sending me your trash and all that.
But David, the idea for that happened that about a week or two ago, I received a package I ordered from eBay, and it was filled, and the guy had put something that was the size of a postage stamp inside a bunch of crumpled paper. When I'm taking it out, I'm like, what the hell? There's nothing in this box. So I got so annoyed and looking until I finally found it. And I said, wow, this would be such a great thing to send to my buddies. Because I figure, they're always like looking for the mail order product. And I wanted to let them experience what it was like in the 70s when you ordered things. And
yeah, Dave. So if you get a box that's small and light, just be prepared for it to be nothing and just extra trash that you're gonna.
Well,
have.
Yeah, it's when every time Eddie's business is brought up and so forth, because in Magic, I was always interested in the comic book ads too because they had the magic and so forth. But I just think about the parallels with Magic catalogs. They may not have no jokes or novelties in them, but the way they describe the tricks and what you think you're getting, and when you get it, a lot of times you're disappointed. I mean, in Magic, there's some things that are really great and clever, but sometimes, you're so disappointed because it sounded so great. And I would just when you were talking, I was thinking about that, ripping open a box or thinking this big illusion was going to come, and this box comes, and I opened up the box, and it's like there's this little thing, and there's like a piece of thread wrapped around, a business card, half of a business card with some crummy photocopied mimeographed instructions,
Well, that's how.
Oh yeah, I know, but it just, you
Dave.
just think about it, and it sounds so great. This is kind of off the topic, but someone just told me about an item that, and I don't know exactly what the pitch was, but there was a guy who was a well-known carnival type of a pitchman, and his name was Bobby Reynolds, and he would hold up an envelope, and he'd say, now this is probably like in the 1950s and 60s. He said, this is not for women to hear. This is for only the boys and the men. So gather around. He goes, boys, what is in this envelope could save your life. If you're ever in a bind, you never know when you could use it. But I don't want you to open it up here. If you buy it, whatever it was, 50 cents or something, $1. You take it home and you open it in the privacy of your own room by yourself. But this is something that's useful, something that you will need. This envelope contains 3 rubbers, and you will. So the long story short is, these guys would buy this stuff and they go and they look, whether they go in their car or somewhere else on the midway or go home, and inside were 3 rubber bands. 3 rubber bands. But everything he said, it's useful. You can use them. If you're in a bind, you could find many, but he made it sound, he sexualized it. But when the guy told me and he read the thing to me, it made me laugh because, this has been going on forever. But
yeah. Oh yeah. That's, and talking about the carnivals, I remember in the 80s still the side shows, because if anybody's listening in Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, we had the this huge fair called the Canfield Fair. It's still around, but they had the side shows there. Look, just like something you would see out of the 40s and 50s, and it would have the guy up front, talking. And if you come in here and we have this show, and then while they're doing, you pay your money to see the show, and then they would have something on stage where you would pay a quarter or 50 cents to look at. And I remember being a little kid and, giving my quarter to go up and see it and going, what the heck is this? Like, it was just something that was so like, cheaply made, or just some type of cheap illusion, and just being so disappointed with it. But, now as I think back, how fun that those were, and it's a shame that they're not around anymore.
And if we do a full circle, that's how the sideshow, that's how Houdini got his start. He started in the sideshow, him and his wife, Beatrice, Bessie, and they did the Metamorphosis trunk, the famous transposition of the magician who is on the outside of the box, then appears in the inside of the box, and now she's on the top of the box. It's still a very famous trick, but they started in the sideshows or the dime shows, and that's how a lot of people got their start that were in entertainment.
Now, was he in a traveling sideshow, or was that something that was just
it was a traveling? It was a traveling show.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
They still have them here in the Meadowlands, Dave. Once a year when they bring the Meadowlands Fair, they have a couple of sideshows in there, and one of the ones, it's kind of like they show the lady that contours into different things. And it's kind of funny. You pay $1 like to go in the tent, and then to see everything, it's an extra $1. And I'm like, man, how they scam so many hundreds of people there. Like the funniest one was the smallest horse. The horse, you go inside where the horse is, and the horse is like 4 or 5 inches below the level where you're walking, and it's supposed to look smaller. It was such a scam. And it's still being done. The only thing I think they allowed or got rid of was when they used humans with oddities, people that had birth defects and stuff like that. They stopped that most, but I think most they still do now. I don't know with the elephants and stuff, everything that they did from Ringling Brothers that went out of business and all that stuff, but there's still some. I remember about a year ago when I went to the Meadowlands Fair, still had them. What I think the greatest looking things of that are the posters.
Oh, the outside posters.
Yeah, the canvas. That's what kills the show, man. I love that stuff.
Those were, I could still picture some of them. Those things were amazing. You got to wonder whatever happened to a lot of those.
David has them.
I have ones that relate to magicians that were on the shows, but there's so many others. I don't have the ones that will say if it's the fat man or the snake girl or the bearded woman, but that's what really drew you in. That was their marquee. And when you looked at that and you could imagine, am I really going to see this? So that was the draw. And those are very valuable today, the original ones. And there's some that were painted.
Now, have those popped up in any
Yeah.
auctions? In the last.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those do come
Have
up.
they really?
Those absolutely do surface. I can't say there's one region of the country where they appear more than others, but
Which two
well,
are
I'm
you
talking
talking
about
about,
the
David?
banners. They appeared.
Yeah, I know, but which one in particular? The fat lady or
All
the
different
bearded
kind
lady?
come up. I mean, there's like the electric man where it shows that he could handle electricity. I mean, anything you could think of that, is a sideshow, even the animal ones, the two-headed calves or, whatever it may be, the banners, those were kept. They were never thrown out unless they got destroyed, through just Mother Nature or got so worn out. But those, you do find those. They're not common, but they've been surfacing. And a lot of times, I was going to say, part of the country they seem to surface a lot is down in Florida, because you had the winter quarters with some of the circuses and the sideshows and so forth. But they are good to collect. The only thing is you need the space, to properly display them and enjoy them.
One question I want to
Eddie
ask
could
Dave.
put it right on his bed next to
Well, you
the
just use it
7-foot
as a down
monster.
comforter or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. There you go.
I want to ask you a question though, because a lot of people probably that are listening to this podcast, Joe and stuff, might be wondering how can somebody have a poster from the 1920s and not make a copy today and say that the copy is an original? What makes the originals different, Dave? What was the process they used that makes an original poster different from me going and making a copy and
Okay,
selling
so
it?
just so no one's confused, we are talking about canvas, painted canvas, which it was folded and durable because it's, material. But posters were also, of course, posters are still used today, but posters going back to the earliest forms of entertainment, that was the way that people knew about the upcoming attractions. And posters were very much like, I guess we could compare it to billboards, but some were that size. They were 16 sheets, 24 sheets, big, big things. But some of them were smaller, like
Wow.
half a size of a household door, a half sheet, a 1 sheet poster. And those were plastered all over the place before that act came into a town. Now, my specialty with the magic, so I could talk about the magic, is before the magician was coming into town, you'd have a unit that would travel ahead of the show and get everything prepared, and they would plaster any blank fence or sides of buildings and use kind of like a wallpaper paste and just put it up, slap it up. They were never meant to exist, beyond that date of that show. And I have some original invoices for these posters, like say 1910 or 1912, and the posters were pennies. I mean, they were, 3 cents a piece, a nickel a piece, but these were beautifully lithographed images, and they were made what's called stone lithography. And even with all the modern printing today, um, you still can't capture the same look as stone lithography because each color was made on these giant stones.
Oh wow. Now, Dave? What would one of those posters go for? In today's market.
Um,
Saying like an average
okay, it
condition
really
one.
depends on the performer, who the performer is. So if you're talking like someone, Howard Thurston, who was a famous magician at the time, um, if say it's a rare image where there's only 10 known, the poster could be anywhere from let's say 10,000 to the 20,000 range. Now some posters are very common for whatever reason. They made many of them, or they always made lots of posters. I mean, a lot of times collectors will say, I have the only one known, the only example known. and then someone else finds one, and now there's two around. So what ends up happening is, say a magician was on a route somewhere, and then all of a sudden they changed the illusion in the act, or they were going to take something out, and the management would say, leave those posters to the side. They're not going to be in Ohio. We're not going to go to Cincinnati and put them up. We're not going here. So those posters sometimes are discovered, and then there's a lot of them, because they weren't posted up. So someone finds a trunk of them, and they leak onto the market. And the smart thing, in collecting is, if you find a stash of something, you don't sell all of them and let people know you have 50 of them. You let them go out in dribs and drabs.
No, what are those more
like
common ones go
1,200
for?
to maybe 2,000, 2,500. Yep.
Well, David, you don't have to say specifically. I know that. I don't know, but we were talking recently, me and you said you came across could be one of a kind poster.
Well, there's more than one.
There might be two, but it's like so rare that there's only one known copy to
There's
exist,
there's two known copies. Mine and one other one. Yeah.
Right. And you think that you could hit over $100,000?
Unlikely. It's unlikely. Magic posters rarely go for that kind of money. Posters that go for over that mark are typically movie posters, or movie posters that have to do with horror movies.
Right. Are you planning to auction
probably
it off
not.
eventually?
No.
You want to send it to me?
I knew that's where it was.
You mean you want the real thing, or you want it so you can make copies of
it? Both.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man. Yeah. In the beginning, when I first met Dave, man, I thought he was going to gravitate to me and stuff. He gravitated to Houdini. You believe that, man?
Eddie's the original magician. He sends you objects in the mail and they somehow disappear.
Right.
You don't know what happened to them.
Well, yeah, that's why you get empty boxes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. One of the most, I don't know if Dave, if I know you do print a copy. You gave me one copy of the auction catalogs you do, which look pretty much like Sotheby's. Are in the upcoming auction, or you're having an auction right now at the present? I think it's in the middle, almost finished. Did you have anything interesting in that auction?
There's a lot of there's a lot of interesting things in there. There's a number of Houdini papers, what we call ephemera, some photographs. There's also a display in there of keys that came from the Earl Lockman collection, and they're jail keys. And there's probably, I don't know, a half a dozen of the keys. There's many on there. I don't remember the exact amount, but say there's 80 keys or something. But there's maybe 6 that are attributed directly to Houdini. Well, no, that's coming up in the auction, which is October. What's this weekend? What's October 15th, 16th? Yeah.
Yeah. Send me a link to that. I want to see that, Dave. I really want to see that. Those keys. It's funny how much skeleton keys go for. I've acquired a couple of original skeleton keys, and some of them go for a premium, which is really surprising. I know Joe had mentioned that Dave had come across a jail cell door. I believe he told me it was Michigan, somewhere in Michigan or Detroit.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually going to get the jail cell door and put it in my little area. Unfortunately, for a difference of 6 inches, I can't, because it doesn't give me the height. I mean, it left me almost crying, man.
Time to carve out a piece of the ceiling then, or the floor.
Well, I could do that. And, I mean, when my family upstairs walk around, they can always, bump into the bars. It's no big deal.
Yeah, they'll just have to adapt to it. That's all.
Yeah.
To the jail cell in the middle of the living room.
So So you're saying the auction is going to close
It's
what day now?
this. It ends this Saturday, which
But people
yeah.
going to start putting
Well,
bids
yeah. I
from
mean, I
now,
don't know when
correct?
this is airing,
And
but because today's Wednesday and the auction closes on Saturday, this Saturday. Yeah, yeah. So you
unfortunately,
may
yeah,
not
this
even
show is
want
not
to
going to air until.
mention the dates because then they're going to be bummed if they go to it. And
Well, for any future auctions,
absolutely,
they could
yeah. And
always
there's
check out
always
your
stuff
website
coming
and
in. It's
add it
amazing
to
what
your
turns up, you know.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody out there, but you're going to miss out on some awesome items this past week.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
you'll
I'll be
be.
able to get the jail keys before
That's
everybody
Eddie.
that's going to get it for a very,
That's Eddie's strategy.
very cheap price.
Yeah. Hey, you know what, Dave? If he does win them, send them in a small, lightweight box with nothing in it. And say, there you go. There's
Yeah.
your keys.
You know,
They must have disappeared.
you know, I'm going to say another thing here. Dave and me, right? Dave introduced me to a place I had never really heard of growing up, but it's upstate New York. It's called Lake George. And up there, he had a couple of years ago, he had one of those oddities museum, kind of like Ripley's Believe It or Not. He actually had the great grandmother of Abraham Lincoln in a coffin there, and he had the actual body, you know. And while up there, I got to tell you one thing. I went with Dave up there on 2 occasions, and it's a phenomenal place, man. I was thrilled, and I loved the area, and I got to see a couple of people because Dave knows a lot of people in the area because he was there, and I got to go into the
Yeah, House of Frankenstein. Yep.
House of Frankenstein. Is it called? What's the name of it?
Yep. Yep.
What is it? House of Frankenstein, correct? And let me tell you, what a hell of a museum, man! It's great. The same guy's been managing it in 1971, and if it wasn't because of COVID, we'd be up there again this Dave, I was thinking of talking to you because we got to return up there, man. We got to, it's a great place to be and to see. And there's 2 actual haunted houses there that are owned by the same company, I think. I didn't get to go into any of the other 2 walk-in houses, but this House of Frankenstein is more like a museum kind of thing. But they have one part in there that really related to me because it has this ghost illusion, and it shows a ghost appearing out of nowhere because it uses the pepper or ghost illusion, which is one of the original ways that they used to use back in the 1940s and 50s to make things appear, like a man turning into a werewolf and all that stuff through mirrors, and they use it for the ghost to make an appearance. This ghost emerges out of nowhere. It's fun. Oh, I loved it. In fact, I recorded by video, and I'm actually dying to go back there again.
That
Go
sounds
ahead,
like
Dave.
a pretty cool place. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, I mean it's
What's your take on it,
classic
Dave?
and it has that nostalgia to it. It was made in the 70s. It's kind of remained untouched, you know. Most of it they've added some modern day things, but it,
What
I
year
had
did you
my
have your museum
museum,
there?
which is just a couple of stores up from there. Had to be around 2010, 11, 12, something like that, around that time period.
Right. That's you
No,
didn't
I
have the
did not.
auction
I
house
did
at
not
that
have the
time, did
auction
you?
house at that time. That if I did, I couldn't. I juggle a lot, but it would be impossible to run them all. But it's totally seasonal. But my place was it wasn't spooky, but it had aspects of things that were strange and oddities. Um,
Yeah, it had yeah, I've seen photographs of it. What did you have in there? You have one
it
of the
was
houses that was
popsicle
built with
sticks. It
two,
was
what was it, sticks?
it was yeah, out of Guinness Book of World Records. There
Right
was
out
a
of the Guinness
castle
Book of
made of
World
popsicle
Records, right?
sticks. It had 400 and forget how many. It was 480,000 popsicle sticks made up a castle. I mean, you could walk in it.
Holy
And it was in the Guinness Book of World Records. And I had, an Area 50 um, one display and mummies and Titanic artifacts and of course, I had a Houdini display, wax figure, and handcuffs, and all that kind of stuff. Abraham Lincoln. It was. I had Johnny Eck. That's another topic for another time. But Johnny Eck was in the movie Freaks. He was the boy that, or the man that had no lower half of his body, walked on his hands, and I had a little vehicle of his there. So it was a good little exhibit, and it was cheap. It was like $6 to get in.
Little place. When we were talking everything earlier tonight, talking about the Houdini and the burial ground and everything, you kind of reminded me of Abraham Lincoln, because when Abraham Lincoln was first buried, I think they stole his body like twice. And then the son, this is kind of interesting because there are photographs of how the body looked when they exhumed the body, or they got it back. They buried it into like a 15 foot pit and threw cement on it on top. So I guarantee you that body's still intact today, because he's buried under so much cement.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about the Lincoln, I had a replica of Abraham Lincoln's casket made by someone I knew, and they did a phenomenal job. I mean, it looked like exactly like the casket. The casket were, they're not like the caskets today. They had a very distinctive look and black cloth, and he did a great job. But I had a wax figure of Abraham Lincoln, eyes closed and everything, and I had the funeral wreath. And everything. And I remember a woman. She was asking me. I mean,
that's why I'm laughing.
I see her there, and she came a couple times in there, and then she was like praying and stuff. And she says she talked to. I had a worker there, and who the owner was, and want to talk to me. So I said, yeah, how can I help you? And she said, how did the government allow you to bring his body in here? And how come more people don't know about it? And, I mean, she fell for a hook, line, and sinker. She thought that was really the body of the 16th president of the United States here in Lake George in a museum.
Oh wow!
that sounds like how Joe.
I had also a small little casket, which was a real casket, a children's size casket with a glass front, and I had put an alien in there, and I had some like twisted metal from Roswell and stuff. It was supposed to be from Roswell and on display and stuff. And I had the same type of thing. A guy says, does the government know you have this stuff here? I mean, and he was dead, yes, dead serious, But yeah, it was fun. The one thing is that when you run a place like that, you have to have revolving displays, or unless you're truly in an area where it's always a turnover of new people. But I had fun with the seasons I was there. And yeah, it was very enjoyable to see the reaction of these people.
Yeah,
I don't know how you didn't, contain yourself from like just busting out laughing and just.
No, I thought you said, how did he bring the Abraham Lincoln in there? I
well,
wanted to know.
I never gave, I never said, well, that's not real, because that's not what you do when you run a place like that, So you just kind of say, well, I've had special permits or this or that. I don't know what I told the woman, but she was very, very convinced that was Abraham Lincoln's body. And, I did the whole thing like it was a funeral. I had the pink lights. I had even the Glade plug-in things that smelled like flowers. And I created that illusion that you were in a funeral home and you were looking at Abraham Lincoln's body. And I had the blow up poster boards, on easels. I had the thing that you kneel on when you go in front of a casket. But the poster board showed, the actual photos of Lincoln in the casket. And when you looked at that and you looked at mine, you say, yeah, that's it, but
That's hilarious.
Todd had asked me, Joe, you and Todd have asked me why did I partner with Dave and many, because I think me and Dave work with the same mentality. Um, he's an awesome guy when it comes to stuff, man, making stuff. His ingenuity is beyond imaginable.
Absolutely. Well, hey guys,
you hear him talk there so
well,
serious and
it's
stuff, but he's
just
got
passion
some
and doing things
right,
that you
Dave?
like. Yeah.
Exactly. Same thing I do with the mail order thing, man. It's the passion and the
Yeah.
years, and
You making the ghost
and
and
you just love this stuff,
doing
man.
that,
People,
it's you're doing what you like to do.
recently it's funny that you said that. Recently, I thought about and my mom even brought me down to earth on it. And I remember saying, I thought about when I sell the ghost from now on, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to include a picture of the ad instead of including the skeleton hands, because the skeleton hands are selling for as much as $20 a piece on eBay. And I always give them away for free. And then my mom said, be careful that you don't take them out and then people won't buy it. And, it kind of brought back a memory about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago that some guy got mad at me because he got the ghost. And he goes, where are the skeleton hands? So he wanted the hands more than the ghost. And for a second there, I'm like, okay, I might not be able to do that, man. But that's what it is. It's just the way people have their imagination and what they like. I've been selling that
Amazing.
darn thing for almost 38 years, man. And just for some reason, last month, I don't know what was the spur, I sold almost 50 plus in a span of about 3 weeks. I don't know if it was the Laura Legends insert or what it was, but it was crazy. And I didn't know how to even finish making them. It was just like they were selling like crazy.
Well, hey guys, I got some bad news. We're at the bottom of the last
Almost
few
done.
minutes here. Time has been flying. So, Dave, you have any final words for
Well, no, I
everyone
mean,
out
I
there?
just we've covered a lot of topics and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, starting off with Houdini and Halloween and going through sideshows and posters and it's always enjoyable because you never know what twists and turns, but it's sure as heck all stuff that we like and enjoy talking about.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you, coming back, and hope you come back for a lot more episodes, and we'll discuss a whole plethora of different stuff.
Well, basically, the whole story is that David is part of the crew we have here, and he's like kind of like between him and Todd, they stay in the background. They come in different shows and stuff. But at the end of the day, me and David have a partnership in America, in Acme House Novelties, and we're producing a lot of products for you guys out there. And please remember, this is the final moment to buy the haunted house. I listed it on my eBay store. I also listed Dave has it on his eBay store, so you guys can just go into the website. You'll find the links for both right there on houseoftheunusual.com. It's very important because once they sell out, I've had a couple of people already told me they already bought one, but once they sell out, they're not going to be around anymore.
Absolutely.
This is
and everybody out there, go visit houseoftheunusual.com, sign up for the forum, and interact with some like-minded people out there. We have some cool blogs there. We have Gullibles, Babbles, Cryptic Classics, and then the forum that's open to everyone, where you could put in your input for different show ideas, different topics that you want to hear, and if you even want to join us on a future show, that's the place to go ahead on there and do that and get a hold of us. Also, check us out on Instagram, House of the Unusual and Cryptic Classics, and also find us on YouTube under House of the Unusual, where Eddie's always posting videos up there, and I've been slacking in the video department, which I'm hoping to get one up this week. So check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and interact with us on there, because we're all just kids at heart who have a passion for this stuff and who love talking about it, who love learning about it, and anything else that pretty much comes with it. So that's all I got to say.
One final thought here, guys. Remember the name Dave Haversat. We're not gonna say exactly what it is right now, but we're planning something that's gonna be happening soon, and he's gonna be the lead person on this subject we're gonna be talking about. And not subjects, we're actually implementing something in the business as a whole. So having said that, it's something for you guys to think about, and it'll be so exciting. You guys won't be able to handle it. Having said, all right, guys.
Hey, good night, guys.
I'm done.
You
Have a
take
Good
great
night,
care.
day.
Eddie. Good
Bye-bye.
night, Dave.
Night. Bye.